Okay, hello everybody, welcome to my channel. Today we are going to be having a look at the 2D tools offered by the Unity asset. Now, for those of you who don't know, Prefab Scripting is an amazing Unity asset which provides 3D, 2D and UI tools like FPS, 3D character, 3D and 2D platformer, and so on. If you have not checked out on the 3D and the UI tools offered by this asset, make sure to check on that video as well. And with that said, let's just get started with the tools. Now, if you go ahead and then have a look at the 2D tools offered, you will see that there are many. Let's get started from the top to the bottom, from 2D character to the set movement tool. Let's start with the 2D character. Now, this is basically a 2D character. It's a platformer, which is pretty much what it is. It not only sets a smooth movement to the platformer, it also gives the ability to jump and so on. So right here, I just created a nice little square and then just change the color to black, and then that's the ground. I'm just gonna go ahead and then also add a box collider 2D to the ground which we have right here, and I'm also gonna add a rigid body 2D and a box collider 2D to the player game object. Now all you have to do now is just drag and drop the player object, drag and drop the player rigid body component, and then that's literally about it. If you go ahead and then play the game, you can see that it really works. The player can not only move around smoothly, it can also jump, and you can go ahead and then change the jump speed and the movement speed if you want. With that done, you probably would wonder what this is right here. Flip turn is an option which is checked on by default. It basically just turns your player around while moving around. So let's say your player wants to move right, it's gonna turn towards the right and then move. If it wants to turn left, it's gonna turn towards the left and then move. So that's basically it. If you have a look at the player with the flip turn on, you can see that the player actually turns 180 degree while moving, and it helps if you have a player with a sprite which needs to flip around when it's moving. Now if you don't want the flip turn, you can pretty much just check it off. With that done, let's move on to the next tool we have, which is the player shooter. Now this is pretty much the player, but it's gonna add the ability to shoot. Now just like the normal player, you will have to drag in the player rigid body, and you probably don't have to drag in the bullet for now, but bear in mind, if you want a custom bullet, you will have to create your own bullet, and then finally just drag and drop into the bullet prefab we have right here. With that done, you also will have to drag in the fire position. That's pretty much the place from which the bullet is going to be fired from. In my case, I want the bullet to be fired from the player. So I'm just gonna go ahead and then create an empty game object and then set the movement to be wherever I want it. And with that done, I'm just gonna go ahead and then drag and drop the fire position. Now bear in mind, the fire position right now is the gun object, which is the child of the player, which means I want the gun object to move around along with the player. It's not just gonna stick in one place. So yeah, with that done, you can literally just play, and then you can see that the player can not only move around, not only jump, but also shoot. And again, it's gonna shoot default bullet which is built in inside the Unity asset. You can go ahead and then change the prefab if you want later on. Also, notice that it's gonna delete itself after some time, and that is because of another tool called set movement, which I'm gonna talk about later. With that done, we can move on with the next tool we have, which is the 2D destroyer. Now that is basically gonna go ahead and then destroy a game object. Now click on to 2D destroyer, and that is gonna create the empty game object called destroyer, and it's gonna have a script attached. And that is where you will have to drag and drop the object which needs to be destroyed. In this case, let's say I want the ground to be destroyed after some time. All I have to do is just go to destroyer, drag and drop the ground, and you can see the conditions. It will either destroy on collision, destroy on delay, or destroy on game start, which is basically when the game starts. I don't know why you want to destroy the object when the game starts, but it's your wish. I'm gonna go ahead and then check on to destroy on delay, which means it's gonna destroy after the delay time which is provided right here, which I'm gonna set it to 3, which is basically the default option. Now if you go ahead and then play, you can see that the object gets destroyed exactly after 3 seconds, and that is basically how destroyer works. You can go ahead and then test around with the game start and the collision as well, and it works very similarly the same, and it's nothing different right there. So with that done, we'll move on to the next tool we have right here, which is basically the mouse follower. It's basically gonna follow. Now the object which is assigned to the mouse follower is basically gonna go ahead and then follow the mouse cursor. Now in this case, let's say I want the box right here. I want the box to be following the mouse cursor. So all I have to do is just drag and drop the box game object into the mouse follower and then just play. That's really it. You can see that the square or the box right here follows the mouse cursor, and yeah, that's really it. You can go ahead and then do anything with this. There are hundreds of use cases in a real game where you want to probably have something follow the mouse, and the use cases are limitless. Okay, now we can now go ahead and then get started with the next tool we have, which is pretty much the object follower. Click onto the object follower, and again it'll go ahead and then create an empty game object. And if you click onto this, you will see that in the script you have 2 options, the target and the follower. So basically the follower is the game object which is gonna follow the target, and that's how simple it is. Now before continuing, I'll have to mention that whatever follower you're using, it needs to have the rigid body 2D component attached to it. So let's go ahead and then create a square. I'm gonna name it as target, and then I'm gonna duplicate it, rename it as follower, and inside the follower I'm just gonna make sure I have a rigid body 2D attached, and then I'm also gonna make sure that the gravity is 0. You can now go ahead and then just drag the target, drag in the player, and you can pretty much play. Now once you have played the game, you can see that the follower follows the target. Now it might be difficult to notice what is the follower and what's the target, because the shape and the color of both of these are the same. So let me just go ahead and then change the shape, change the color of the target. So now because the color of the target is red, you can now easily see that the follower, which is white in color, is now following the target, which is red in color. And pretty much that's how simple it is. Let's go to the next asset we have right now, which is the path follower. Now let's move on to the next tool we have, which is the path follower. Now click onto that. It's going to create an empty game object, and that's how simple it is. Now all you have to do now is provide the start and the end point of the follower, and also of course provide the follower itself. So let's take the target as the start point, and let's duplicate that and then also create an end point. So the follower is gonna start from the start point and then end at the end point. That's how simple it is. Now I can place the endpoint anywhere I want. I'm just gonna change the color of the start point as blue. It just makes more sense. So once that is done, you can now go ahead and then drag the start point, drag the end point, and of course also the follower. And now if you go ahead and then play the game, you can see that the white color square, which in this case is the follower, it's gonna start from the start point and then go all the way to the end point, and that is the path which is being followed, and that is how the path follower works. Now of course this is just a very simple example. This has endless amount of use cases where you just want something moving along a nice little path, and this is how easy it is to achieve it. Now with that done, we can go into the next tool we have, which is the look at. And just like any other tool, all you have to do is click on it, and then it creates another empty game object which contains two options again, the target and the object looking. Again, the target is gonna be the object which is gonna be looked at. Now the look at tool is basically the tool which helps an object point towards or rotate towards a target object, and the target object can be anything. So that's how simple it is. So I'm just gonna go ahead and then rename the start point as the target and the follower as the look at. And now if you go ahead and then look at the tool right here, you can see that object looking should be having a rigid body component in it, and you can see that I already have a rigid body component. Now all I have to do is drag and drop the rigid body component into the object looking, drag and drop the target into the target, and you can just play. That's how simple it is. And now if you have a look at the game, you can see that the white colored square, which is in this case basically the look at, is looking at or pointing towards the target, which in this case is the blue colored square. And that's how simple it is to just point any object towards any other object. As simple as that. Now moving on to the next tool, which is the moving platform. Now moving platform is really different from path follower, and I'll explain how and why. Now the main difference between the moving platform and the path follower is that the path follower is basically an empty game object which you will have to fill, whereas moving platform comes with everything by default. It comes with the start point, end point, and the platform itself by default. Now another major difference between the path follower and the moving platform is that the path follower can be used in any 2D object, but moving platform is used as a part of a UI canvas. So that's another major difference. It highly depends on what you want to do and how you want it to work. And basically it works just by dragging and dropping again the start point, the end point, and the platform itself, which is gonna be the follower. So with that done, you can go ahead and then have a look at the game, and you can see that it just works just like that. You don't have to add any other customizations if you want, but considering that the sprites right here are too simple to use, if you're developing a professional game, of course you will probably have to change the sprite and then customize the moving platform. Now with that done, you can finally go to the last tool we have, which is the set movement. Now click on that, it's going to create an empty game object. Again, click on that and you will see that you will have to fill in just one game object into this. So basically, set movement is just as simple as setting the movement of a game object. It's gonna set movement of a game object, and yeah, that's all it's gonna do. Now, why do you even need this? You can set the movement of the game object, right? Well, that's the whole point. You don't have to go ahead and then set the movement of an object every time. You don't have to go ahead and then use C# every time and then set movement of your game object. You can do this by using this asset itself. So yeah, that's how it. So yeah, let's just go ahead and then create a square, and I want this. I'm gonna go ahead and then rename this as bullet. Now I want the bullet to move, so I'm just gonna drag and drop it into the object to move option. Now down below right here, you can say which axis you want it to move in, X or Y axis. Now by default it is checked as X axis. Now by default it is checked into Y axis, and yeah, you can just go ahead and then play, and then you can see that the bullet in this case is moving, and that's exactly what you want. You can go ahead and then change the speed of the bullet, and you can go ahead and do anything with that. So you probably need to destroy the bullet after some time. It shouldn't go forever. So for that, all you have to do is just check on to destroy. That is gonna go ahead and then destroy the game object, which in this case is the bullet, but it's gonna destroy the game object in the delay time, or the destroy time in this case. Now I want the destroy time to be 3. So if I play the game, you can see that exactly after 3 seconds the bullet destroys itself, and that's exactly what you want. So with that done, we finally we have covered all the tools which is offered by. With that done, we have covered all the 2D tools offered by Prefab Scripting. Now bear in mind, this is the first version of Prefab Script, so bear in mind this can be less compared to the actual number of tools which currently exists in Prefab Script. And with that done, we finally come to the end of this video. I hope you really enjoyed it. Make sure you hit a like, share this to people who actually need it, and of course subscribe. I'll meet you in the next video.